Hi, Stefan. Welcome to the Value Driven Marketing Podcast. So good to have you today.
Thank you, Elena. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. There's a question I like to ask every guest in the podcast, which is not marketing related, but I'm always curious to learn what people wanted to be when they were little. So what did you dream to become as a child?
I think the first thing I can remember was to either be a football player or to be a football commentator, so I could go around watching football matches. I think that's the very first job I can remember wanting to have.
I think football is also a very popular sport in Denmark as well.
Yeah, very much, very much.
Cool, quite interesting where you ended up. So can we go back a bit to Dreamdata? Can you let me know, what drove you to build Dreamdata? What need or gap did you identify in the market?
Yeah, so I think from my own experience, I've really felt the pain of understanding what works in B2B companies. The last 10 plus years, I've been working in B2B marketing in some role or the other. And I've tried scaling companies fast, and the first money you put in, you have a pretty good idea about how they work. But the last money you put in, you're kind of, I don't know whether it works or not. And as I was finishing my last job, I met my two co-founders that are the technical or like product co-founders of our company, and they said to me that they had some sort of solution to this problem, and I was pretty skeptic. But when I saw the data that they could actually produce, I like instantly knew that this is a very real problem for B2B marketers, understanding what works. Some call it attribution, but just getting an overview of the complete customer journey and repurchase, lifetime value, etc. is very, very much not transparent for most companies. And I knew if we could fix this problem or have a really good solution for it, there should be a massive market for it.
Yeah, I can totally relate that there's a big pain in finding out what works and be able to double or scale the investment on that and the spend on that rather than trying to guess. I'd also like to debate a bit about and talk to you a bit about, the rise of dark social, or what it's called in B2B, in the different marketing communities that I'm in. There's a sort of debate, I would call it, around dark social and the way we discover products or services in B2B is changing. So rather than searching for something on Google, someone might, let's say, tune in and listen to this episode and, hear about Dreamdata for the first time. And then maybe they connect with you on LinkedIn, interact with your content there. And later in the future, when they actually need attribution software, they would say, oh, let me check out Dreamdata because I already heard of them and, they seem to do a great job. And then attribution would maybe say, okay, this lead has come from, organic search, but rather the original source would be a podcast or social or anything else. And I think the question is, if you focus too much on measuring and attributing everything, then you maybe sometimes might be focusing on, the wrong things. So how, what's your take on that?
I think somewhat you almost answered the question as well. I think, dark social, I think is just calling word of mouth something new. I think for any kind of analytics discipline, there's stuff that is relatively easy to measure, and then there's stuff that is hard to measure. So for me, it's not kind of something radically new. Something that is hard to measure is people, just chatting to each other, listening to a podcast, being at a conference. And then there's stuff that is very easy to measure, which is somebody who clicked this ad, downloaded this ebook, visited your website, you gave them a call, and so forth. And I think where the whole dark social debate is kind of going a little bit off track is that when people make it kind of an either or choice, because in reality, it absolutely doesn't have to. I think you should use the best of both worlds. And it's true that, a lot of journeys start from somebody hearing about a product and then going to Google and maybe even click your branded ad and buy your product. But that's not where the journey started. It started from the word of mouth. I think it's just the name of the game. And in either way, I think data and analytics is a game of competitive advantage, which means that if you know more than your competitor, then you're positioned to also grow faster and better than what they're doing. So, I mean, the fact that you cannot measure everything in this world is, it's just a state. But it doesn't mean that you should not try to understand as much as you can about your customer journeys. And that's kind of the product we're trying to build with Dreamdata, is that we want to take all the touches that you do have available and put into a timeline. Then you need to add common sense and gut feeling to the picture. So you don't, there's a limit to how many branded searches you can buy on Google Ads. So you need to create the demand somewhere. And sometimes that's a measurable discipline, and other times you have to rely on your experience and gut feeling. I think that's how I see that one.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So basically focus on what you can actually measure and get that data right. Like have a clear view of it so you can actually extract the information and make decision based on that. And of course, what you cannot measure, just go with it.
Yeah, well, we make, every time we do something new, we write that down in a calendar. So we know on this day we implemented this thing, or we set up this test, or we did whatever experiment. And if metrics suddenly goes up or metrics suddenly goes down, we can go back and see, okay, on this day we started this thing, it was not super measurable, but it was a radical change, and now metrics went up or down. So I think also one of these, an important thing in all this growth thing is to, just keep writing down what you actually do, so you can kind of go back and see where did the metrics radically change, positively or negatively.
So what had an impact or an influence on?
Yeah,
absolutely.
At least it gives you a qualified guess to what the root cause is.
Yeah, so don't operate in the dark. Keep track of what you do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. That puts things in perspective, I would say. And if we were to go a bit back to Dreamdata, how would you say you go about creating value for your clients and just your audience before they become clients? Because you're very active on social, and not just Dreamdata as a company, but, different people within the organization. You also create long form content. You're active on webinars, most recently. So there are a lot of things going on. So how do you approach creating value for your audience and clients?
Yeah. So from the highest, let me just say a few different things. I think we're in a situation where there's a lot of B2B marketers that don't know what they don't know, which means that they underestimate how wrong the data that they're looking at today is. All the platforms that people use are mostly intended for B2C companies. That's the Facebook ads, the Google Analytics, the Google ads, Twitter ads, etc. They're all wired to understand what goes on when one person is part of a buying process. But for all our customers, like the normal journey is 6+ months and includes 3 to 5 people, and your own team, sales, marketing, customer success touches the clients as well. And then maybe you have 5 different data silos, from your CRM to your marketing automation to your CS tool, which means that the whole process of that customer journey gets extremely complex. And what we're then trying to do is really to educate the market and try to consistently post about stuff that is relevant to what we do, not necessarily the same thing. I think that will get very boring quite fast, but it's just trying to document what we learn and then share it with the community. If you then join that with a well-defined ideal customer profile, which for us is B2B software as a service companies, then you know which kind of media, podcast, people to connect with on LinkedIn, etc. So if you let your ideal customer profile be the guiding star of your activity, then as you release more and more high quality, well-written stuff, hopefully they become more and more, you create some sort of value for them because you help them understand the problem that they're really facing. And hopefully it'll mean that when they have the problem of, for example, attribution or B2B customer journeys, they will then come to us at some point.
So what I'm hearing is you're building a lot of, internal data that you have and bring that to light and, put those conclusions and learnings in front of the people who could use them the most and who ideally at some point in the future might, search for Dreamdata or become a customer.
I think it's almost kind of a mindset of looking at our own activities and understanding that this is actually a generic problem that most people would find interesting. For example, collaboration between marketing or sales, or how to do better Google ads, or B2B sales can be tough. So kind of finding those topics that other people would be sitting with as well, and then offering your point of view on how to deal with it.
And how do you sort of mitigate, creating value given, I would say even free advice, because, you're sharing what you know, you're teaching, you're helping educate. So how do you mediate giving things away for free to connecting them back to revenue?
So that's a good question. So I think it's a combination of gut feeling and data. Again, we need to go to. Since I think a year ago, we started this heavy push on like social selling on LinkedIn. And initially we were following very tightly what happened. For example, we could see when we had like a somewhat viral post, the general traffic on the website would be spiking on those days. We would also have some proof that somebody clicked directly from LinkedIn to our website. And some of those would also convert to, to a demo call or something like that. So I think it was kind of, if you stare yourself too blind on only what you can measure directly or like directly attribute, then you overlook some obvious conclusions that on this day we didn't do anything else besides having a very viral LinkedIn post. So it's probably that viral LinkedIn post that led to the spike in organic traffic and direct traffic and peak demo calls. And so that's kind of why, like, if you only stared at what can we actually measure that came directly from LinkedIn and directly booked the demo call on that first session, then you would come to a different conclusion. So it's a little bit of a combination of what, I think an overall good marketing advice is that if you're in doubt whether something works, it doesn't. So with this, with our social selling, we know that this is working. Some of the stuff we can measure, some of the stuff we have to just qualitatively describe with, here's a screenshot of somebody who mentioned us, or here's somebody who said to me in a sales conversation that he follow our LinkedIn post and likes them. So some you can get quantitative data on, and other stuff you have to prove with like qualitative data.
Could you maybe try and isolate top 2-3 marketing initiatives that brought the most ROI for you guys?
Good question. So I think we have to move outside the kind of the obvious like branded search. Then I would say the review platforms. The traffic you get directly from there normally comes with a very strong intent. I think this whole social selling, this ROI is quite strong. If you get your team into like agreeing upon that you cannot use more than 5 to 10 minutes per post, then LinkedIn is an incredible place, because you can just go and connect exactly with the people who looks like your customer, and you can get a message in front of them. So it's a highly scalable way to get in front of your ideal customer profile. What else? I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of the matched audience ads on LinkedIn, because I think you can upload a list of 1,000 companies, and if you make that list of those 1,000 companies really, really good, then even though LinkedIn is normally more expensive than, for example, Facebook, then because it's exactly the right people, it can be a very interesting way to advertise as well. And then maybe a last hack, just for like ROI. As we started out with Dreamdata, we did nowadays we have like an ebook on our front page, but that ebook just started like me taking the 10 first blog posts we wrote and putting them into a PDF, and then Googling book template and putting that book on the front page. And after introducing that down the ebook that you can download now, then 2% of the visitors on our website downloaded the ebook, so we can speak to and send emails to a lot more people. And all it took was just joining those 10 blog posts into a PDF file, and we start to convert more traffic.
And can you let me know what are, the North Star metrics you're looking at? How do you measure marketing's impact into revenue? What metrics do you look at?
For our company, there's only one thing that matters, and that is that we get enough revenue in every month. And then if you know your sales cycle, sales funnel super well, then you can start to reverse engineer. If I need to meet this revenue target, our average deal size is this number. This means I need, let's say, 10 deals. Okay, to get to 10 deals, I need to have 3x the amount of deals going into the sales pipeline. Okay, then I need 30 sales qualified leads. To produce those 30 sales qualified leads, I need to have maybe 5x the amount of marketing qualified leads. And then you end up at 150 marketing qualified leads to produce 10 deals. So I think it comes from this. You need to know the revenue target of the company, and then you need to know how long does it take in each cycle, and what is the conversion rate in each deal stage. And then marketing can actually become a revenue driver more than just somebody who produces slideshows and sets up booths at the events, etc.
And it sounds to me, and this is like additional question, but it sounds to me that it has to be a strong alignment between sales and marketing. Like those departments need to talk to each other. And I was hoping maybe you can share some ideas on how you guys go about really aligning sales with marketing. So a few tips or ideas that are working for you.
Actually, I just put up a LinkedIn post about the same thing, but I think, to be honest, the best way to improve your return on ad spend is for marketing to be aligned with salespeople, because you can throw in a ton of ideal customer profiles, booking demos, but if the salespeople don't pay attention, if they don't like what you put in, if they're not assigned as owners of these accounts, you're never going to produce revenue. So for marketing to be effective, sales actually needs to like the leads that are coming from marketing, and they need to do all the follow-up. For a complex product like ours, it takes a lot of work from the day they book the first demo. Then they need to involve other stakeholders. They need to have a proof of concept. Then they need to have approval maybe from legal or a data protection officer or something like that. And all that work is mainly done by the salespeople. So I think the first exercise you can do in a company is to, like, company-wide agree about what's our ideal customer profile. Like, who is it that we should try to attract? Who's going to be a happy user of our product and also be willing to give us money for the product, and who will also be like happy and renew when that time comes. With that one set, then the activities of marketing becomes a lot easier, because it aligns towards who the salespeople have agreed to is the ones we want to attract. And it also dictates for us, for example, our salespeople are not allowed to spend time on accounts that doesn't fit our ideal customer profile. So when a demo comes in, we look at them, does it fit the ideal customer profile? If not, then we try to push them a little bit off with a mail. If they do look like an our ideal customer profile, then the salesperson can actually do the demo call with them. Then we've also established we do a ton of stuff, and we can still even sit in the same room, so it's hard to it's hard not to be aligned. But I think as you grow over time, you need to have different measures. But that we have a metric that we call sales accepted leads, which is kind of the marketing qualified leads that the sales agree that this looks like an ICP. And I think, if I'm being honest, that's perhaps the furthest marketing can be accountable. Like the people we have attracted, they look like the ones we normally sell to. And from there on, it's mainly up to sales to actually make it happen. So a metric I follow quite tightly is sales accepted lead, which means they look like our ideal customer profile, because then I know what the normal conversion rate is from a sales accepted lead. People should bring the marketers into sales calls so they listen to what the customers say. And salespeople should also they should keep a document of the things that they are constantly being asked. And then they should go to marketing and say, these are the 10 questions people ask us every day. Can we please have some information on our website about these things? And then, suddenly those questions goes away because we've already answered them. And then the salespeople can start to write down new questions and then go back to marketing and say, now it's these questions we're being asked. And at some point, hopefully your website becomes like a unit of, pre-sales. So you only have to talk with the customer when they're ready to, almost buy your product.
Awesome. So yeah, that's super good advice for everyone who's looking to better work with sales and just get better results for the overall company. Cool. And if we were to look a bit into the future, I'm curious to know, how do you see, growth of Dreamdata, and what marketing levers are you pulling to get there?
I think we already use a lot of the traditional channels, and all of them are working. So I think one point is also separate point is just as marketers, we should stop being slaves of creativity. In the sense that if you found something that works, just keep doing more of it, and increase the budget, hire another person to do the same thing, because it's those things that do work that is going to fund all the other experiments that you need to then go into and test and experiment with. With that said, I think I'm very obsessed with what I talked about before, about making the website, as far as possible, answer any type of question that our customers might have, and explain the value of our product. So in broad strokes, everything product marketing related is something that I really want to improve. Produce videos, produce podcasts, produce much better technical documentation, so everybody who's involved in the sales process can find answers to the questions that they might have. And I think the magic of product marketing is to go to your very, very smart, intelligent people and try to understand what they're doing, and then actually being able to express that in a way that the people you attract with marketing can understand. So I think ramping up all types of content to just make our website better and better.
So basically build it as a content hub, pre-sales hub, as you said earlier.
And that goes from the most technical bits of documentation to just writing articles that gets caught up in Google and then attracts people afterwards.
And in time, traffic will ramp up, the right people will find the right content, and they'll have an easy time just getting in touch with you and continue the journey. Stefan, I would also like to go a bit back to the customer journey, and if you could share some insights into how this journey is evolving in B2B, because there are so many touch points. A lot of them happen maybe in the dark, so it's word of mouth first, and then comes anything else. So could you share a few insights, from your data, if you can, how this journey has evolved and what should B2B
I think
marketers
the
pay
one thing
attention
we
to?
see across all our customers, and which is a super important metric, is what we call time to revenue. How long does your customer journey take from the first touch until you win the account? What most people refer to in their mind and in their team when they hear this is that from the first conversion until we sold to them. But in fact, that's just the sales journey, you can say. It doesn't involve all the research that goes in while people are anonymous, just lurking around your website looking at stuff. And what we can see across all, like broad strokes across all our customers, is that the unknown time is as long as the known time. So if you know that your sales cycle is 3 months, then you can expect your unknown research phase also to be 3 months. Now, what that means for marketers is that if we want to impact this year's revenue, then we actually need to start 2x the amount of months before the known sales cycle. So let's say it's 6 months and you come in October or November and want marketing to help impact the budget. Well, then it's too late. It also matters a lot if when you're looking at your marketing experiments, if you underestimate how long a normal journey is, then you might end up shutting down stuff that's working or like scaling stuff that's not working, because you're operating blindly because the journey is actually 2x the length of what you expect it to be. So I think that fact is super important because otherwise you'll end up not hitting all your revenue targets and make a lot of wrong decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a super good insight. So double X, if you know your journey is this much, double this and be aware of that timeline and maybe cut down on your expectations, or rather create your expectations around a double double time.
It's not just for us as marketers, but we need to explain this to the salespeople. We need to explain that to the C-level. We need to explain that to everybody in the business so they understand why are we doing these things now? Well, that's because in 6 months we need to close these deals. We have to start now, otherwise it's too late.
Yeah, that's. I think you've put things very well into context. And maybe going a step further, what would your recommendation be for B2B marketers? How should they make the best use of data and the trends in how customers buy today in B2B? How should they use this information? What should they pay attention
I normally
to?
recommend a 3-step approach, you can say. 1, like start with your gut feeling.
Okay.
What do you think makes sense to do? And then 2, start being able to explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. Come up with a narrative of, we expect to do A, B, C, D, and then something will happen. And you need to try that story against your salespeople, against your manager and so forth, to get it tested off whether it makes sense. And when you have your gut feeling and your story about why you're doing the things you're doing, then you need to provide data on whether what you thought was true or not. Sometimes you can have quantitative data that's like massively confirms this. Other times you have to rely on qualitative data. So the process is kind of what's your gut feeling saying. Try to come up with a story, whether that's a presentation or just a verbal story, and then go out and do it, and then show up with some data about how did it actually turn out. I think that's constantly the motion that I'm trying to work with.
Yeah, sounds very good. Like it's a very actionable framework, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, shoot,
I do
shoot,
have
shoot,
a
shoot.
bonus question if you're up for it. I'm just trying to figure out, could you try and isolate a couple of things that or ideas that B2B marketers get wrong about data? What's a misconception that they have and it's
So
dangerous, or
I
a couple of
think
misconceptions?
be aware that most tools you use are intended for B2C. This means that all the data you look at in Google Ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, etc., they're actually in a B2C scenario. B2Bs, they buy as a team, they buy as a buying committee, and it's going to take a long time. There's a lot of people involved. So the metrics you're looking at, if you're analyzing them too simply, is just going to mislead you, and it's probably going to put you in a situation where you're not impacting the company's revenue. And if you're not impacting the company's revenue, then yeah, bad things happen at some point.
Why are you here for? Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that makes total sense. And yeah, I agree. The fact that those tools were intended for another use case, I think that makes a lot of sense. So be mindful of that. It's a very interesting advice. Stefan, thank you so much. For me, those are really all the questions that I had like for you today. Do you feel like we missed anything that was important and I skipped it?
No, I think you prepped some really good questions, Selena. So I hope I provided a good answer to some of them.
Yeah, you absolutely have, and definitely for me, it was a great conversation. You put things in context, so really loved it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, Elena.